This was a feasibility study that asked the people of Geelong what would it take to make their city accessible and inclusive against global benchmarking, in other words, a world-leading accessible and inclusive city.
So the task that lies ahead, in one sense, is really quite simple. It's correcting some of the ills and wrongs that have been neglected for some time already. And then we have this bigger task that we think, and that the community thinks, can unlock a whole bunch of really positive aspects for access and inclusion in Geelong.
Out of the Accessible and Inclusive Geelong feasibility study then came 5 principles that underpin 6 priority actions. Under these 6 priority actions are a further 31 actions that must be implemented in parallel or before the priority actions, so that the priority actions have the greatest possible impact. The Leaders for Geelong team came together to create a plan for the implementation of the actions, identifying lead agencies and potential funding and outlining steps for completion in 5 to 10 years. But then came COVID-19, meaning we're extending this project to mid-2021. The current stage, engaging stakeholders in the evolving plan, is crucial. Without your engagement, the plan cannot be furthered.
Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us to hear about the Accessible and Inclusive Geelong 2019-20 Leaders for Geelong community-based project. Our amazing Leaders for Geelong project team includes Kelly Marsland from GForce, Adam Fredentaro from Diversitat, Lachlan Hodgson from Leisure Networks, Shona Eland from YMCA Geelong, and myself, Amy Chambers from WorkSafe Victoria. We have worked closely with our project champion, the network co-leader of Home at Deakin University, Professor Richard Tucker, to undertake work to address the recommendations for the Accessible and Inclusive Geelong feasibility study. This study, undertaken by Deakin University, envisages Geelong as a city designed so that it can be accessed, understood and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of their age, ability or disability. A vision of Geelong to be an accessible and inclusive city for all. What is now needed is a plan and commitment to implementation. We've worked towards the development of and local commitment to an implementation plan as recommended by the Accessible and Inclusive Geelong feasibility study. I'd now like to welcome Kelly Marsland.
Thanks, Amy. The Accessible and Inclusive Geelong study resulted in the identification of 5 key principles to be applied across 6 priority recommendations. Importantly, to successfully create an accessible and inclusive Geelong, none of the recommendations and actions identified can occur effectively in isolation, because they can only overcome systemic barriers by being implemented in combination. To create an accessible and inclusive Geelong for all community members, many organisations could play a part in implementation. Therefore, the challenge for our project team is to ensure the report doesn't sit on a shelf with no further action. We are working to create an implementation plan outlining the steps required for the successful execution of the plan in a 5 to 10 year period. Importantly, as a project group, we are unable to lead or be responsible for delivering on the implementation plan. So identification of potential auspice or lead agencies or collaborations and funding opportunities to enable this are key to our success.
Thanks, Kelly. In the very first instance, our team focused on gaining a strong understanding of the Accessible and Inclusive Geelong feasibility study, what the recommendations were and what exactly it was that our project needed to achieve. We quickly garnered the simplest way to put it. We're all on a road trip. We know our destination. We just need to work out the roadmap to get there. We then commenced and utilised some stakeholder mapping and engagement tools to ascertain who the key organisations, community groups and individuals to approach. Consideration was given to those that we felt that would be most passionate, that would commit, influence and deliver the eventual implementation plan. The project group completed an environmental scan to ensure that we would be leveraging planned and existing capacity funding and commitment to the shared values, issues and identified in the accessible and inclusive feasibility study. And finally, our focus is to develop an implementation plan that importantly has the commitment of the local organisation or group of organisations, along with the local government and state government backing to deliver on the plan.
So to formulate this implementation plan, the team began initial stakeholder consultation with the aim of gaining a clear understanding of the level of stakeholder engagement, interest and commitment. We also wanted to determine which stakeholders had influence, funding and resourcing. Stakeholder mapping was undertaken to determine the stakeholders in the region that we really needed to work with. This involves sorting stakeholders into segments, core, direct and indirect, and then determining which stakeholders have the greatest influence and interest, leading us to identify the stakeholders we should focus our time and our resources. The team commenced initial consultations with some key stakeholders to gain insights and really develop awareness of existing knowledge of any commitment to the recommendations of the study. Consultations were undertaken with Christine Cousins, with Deakin University, City of Greater Geelong, G21 and the Committee for Geelong. Primarily, the plan was for these consultations to really inform the work to develop an implementation strategy. In addition, we aim to gain commitment from a potential lead agency or agencies to take ownership of the plan. Plus, we wanted to determine those stakeholders who are wanting to support implementation of one or more priority areas. It was already a big project, and then the implications of COVID-19 made quality stakeholder engagement an even bigger challenge.
Unfortunately, 2020 presented enormous challenges for both the project team and local organisations working within the disability and inclusion space. COVID-19 took away connection, focus and opportunities to consult in an accessible and inclusive way. And as many organisations focused on survival, pivoting and reimagining, the project team felt that this project was far too important not to do our very best. So we put the project on ice and provided organisations time to look at a future COVID state and what access and inclusion would look like. We haven't stopped, we've paused. The project implementation plan development will bring about significant social change for our Geelong community. It will change how people with a disability work, live, travel and recreate in the region, and requires a holistic, inclusive approach to stakeholder engagement than what we could do at the height of the pandemic. We recognise that an inclusive and accessible Geelong plan has significant impact to connect the community, businesses and government. But most importantly, it has the ability to impact the lives of people with a disability. Lynn Foreman is a consultant and a human rights advocate and has been an integral part in the project design and consultation in the feasibility stage. Let's hear why Lynn believes this project is so worth investing in.
Thank you for inviting me today. As everyone said, I am a person with a disability, so I live it day in, day out. I was born with my disability, so it's nothing new to me. But I find that being on this project last year was fantastic because we all want an exclusive Geelong. We do bring a lot to the community. We actually have to go shopping like everybody else. We also a lot of us are on committees anyway, which we need access to. And I think being on this study, I think it just brought out to me that it is possible. There's nothing is not possible these days with the technology we have. These, everything. We do live, and we live in the community. We travel, so travel is a highly important part of our lives because we can motor. Some people, But, you know, it's easy to get on a taxi or a train or something that's accessible. I know going back many years ago, the trains were just, we used to have to go in the luggage carry in the back, which was really not very nice. We have the right to participate in cultural and public life. As you can see, I'm here today, so obviously I do a lot. And I suppose with me, I feel like I'm speaking for the people that can't speak in the disability community, and that's why I always tend to speak for them as well as myself. I guess too, I'm not sure whether everyone's aware, but on the 3rd of December, we have International Day for People with Disabilities. And this year, I looked up on the website, of course, the United Nations, and I thought it was a fitting theme for this thing is better back building, and that is towards disability, inclusion, accessibility and contribution of people with disabilities. Bit of a mouthful, I'm sorry. The NDIA also theme is seeing the ability, not the disability. We might be disabled, but we can do a lot in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. It's a compelling case to look outside our normal and consider the impact this project can have on so many people's lives in our community. To have the basic rights of access and inclusion to accommodation, goods and services, travel and transport. So here's our ask to you. As we reignite this project in January 2021, we want the Committee for Geelong members, organisations and alumni members to reach out and be part of the consultation process that will shape how we bring to life the priorities and recommendations. Thank you.